I think most Americans are deeply uncomfortable with minors accessing irreversible medical transition treatments.
Tommy, though, but come on now. The fact that men in their 60s and 70s just get to get Viagra, I have all kinds of issues with when so many women can't access abortion.
I shared a stage with a radical queer activist and lived to tell the tale. We're going to break down my recent experience at a really interesting event with the Aspen Institute and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, across our media, and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. Heads up, guys, this episode is pre-taped because I'm actually heading to New York City first thing Tuesday morning because I'm going to be making my debut on CNN. Yes, CNN. I'll be on the 10 p.m. Eastern hour with a panel of liberals, presumably all arguing with me, and it should be fun. So do tune in, even if you're not a usual CNN viewer. I think at the very least, it should make for good TV. All right, guys, so up first, like I mentioned, we're going to recap a really interesting event I did out in Aspen, Colorado with the Aspen Institute and Gay Ski Week in Aspen, which was a panel about LGBT issues and politics, moderated by Jane Coaston of the New York Times and Crooked Media, who's a fair but definitely, I think, left-leaning in some ways moderator and journalist, and then me and two other panelists, one of whom was a woman named Kiera Johnson, who is the president of the National LGBTQ Task Force, which is one of these kind of militant, left-wing LGBTQ activist organizations. And honestly, guys, it's pretty rare I get to interact with these people. So I was really excited about the opportunity. I went all the way out there. It was really lovely, and it ended up being a great experience. But we did have a couple of spicy exchanges I want to recap with you guys. The first interesting moment came when, inevitably, the topic of medically transitioning minors, what's kind of euphemistically referred to as gender-affirming care, when that came up in the panel. Take a listen. I think most Americans are deeply uncomfortable with minors accessing irreversible medical transition treatments.
Tommy, though, but come on now.
No, it's a very serious issue.
No, it's not that I don't think it's serious. I'm saying when we talk about hyperbole,
What was hyperbole?
Well, what I'm saying is if you look, there is no data that is talking about a whole bunch of minors that are having irreversible therapy.
Well,
as a matter of fact.
So this was a really interesting moment for me because as soon as I brought up the notion that medically transitioning minors is a bridge too far for many common sense people, including those who are not anti-gay or anti-trans, Kiera interrupted me, which, okay, I didn't interrupt her, but that's fine. It's a panel. There's back and forth. And pulled what's kind of an interesting rhetorical trick that LGBT types and activists often do, where they simultaneously argue that transitioning minors is super rare and basically never happens, and also that laws banning or restricting it are terrible and must be resisted at all costs, which the math there has never made sense to me. If somebody was trying to ban something that I thought was basically never happening, I wouldn't be all that concerned about banning it because it's not happening, right? But it's also just not true. Like, this is very much a 2018 talking point that needs to be updated because we have the data now, and it is happening. A national advocacy group of medical professionals against woke hospital agendas shared a database called Does My Hospital Transition Kids with Fox News. In total, the group conservatively identified 5,747 minor patients who received sex change surgery and 13,994 who received some form of gender reassignment treatment just between 2019 and 2023. They got this information from insurance claims from private insurance companies, Medicaid and Medicare, which excludes data from Kaiser, self-pay, and charity care. So if any of these things happened and people paid out of pocket, which they do sometimes, that wouldn't have been counted in these numbers, meaning that if anything, they're probably underestimates. But nonetheless, thousands of minors minors got sex change surgeries and tens of thousands got puberty blockers and hormones, which in many cases have irreversible effects, from potential lifelong sterilization to lifelong issues with sexual functioning. So it is happening, and if you're denying that, you're just either not up to the data or not being intellectually honest. But guys, this next clip is where the debate got kind of spicy and interesting, to say the very least.
What I'm saying is that gender affirming care is something bigger than therapy that young people get, right? When they think they're transitioning. It is bigger than that. And so I mean, the fact that men in their 60s and 70s just get to get Viagra, I have all kinds of issues with when so many women can't access abortion. Am I actively doing work?
Well, those are two very different things.
Are they, ladies?
Yeah.
No. I'm not asking you. Okay.
Can we stick on the gender affirming care issue for just a moment?
Sure.
So I'll just say this. It is an objective fact that thousands, you can look at insurance filings, thousands of minors, teenage natal females, have had double mastectomies. The New York Times reported some of them are as young as 12 or 13. I'm sorry, but Americans will never support a coalition that asserts that as a human right.
My intense desire to
agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
We'll continue this conversation another time.
Yes.
So there was a lot there. I did not anticipate Viagra and abortion being thrown in there. I am going to go on the record, and I know I'm apparently not supposed to have an opinion on this because I'm a man, but I don't think those two things are comparable to gender affirming care. I think they're kind of categorically different. I also don't think they're comparable to each other. I mean, one of them just treats sexual dysfunction in men, and the other is like a really complicated legal and ethical and moral issue that involves, depending how you see it, the ending of a human life. I don't quite think, if you're pro-choice or pro-life, we can have that conversation. I don't really think it's the same as the little blue pills. I think it's a little kind of categorically different than that, but I'm just a man, so what do I know? And neither of them have anything to do with gender affirming care, by the way. That was kind of wild to me. Gender affirming care is medical treatments to make you appear as the opposite sex as to what your biology is, in order to treat a mental issue where you have intense gender dysphoria. That's not what Viagra or abortion are. They serve different purposes, have different preconditions, and are just fundamentally different. So this whole kind of thing about this was a kind of a distraction to me. And I always bristle when woke people do this thing where they're like, oh, well, I'm not asking you because you're a man and ladies' opinions on this is what matters. It's like not an argument. If a person who happened to be female said the same thing or made the same point, it wouldn't somehow be more true or less true. Like, identity doesn't equal argument. And I actually think that's a kind of toxic worldview. And look, I ultimately think that I'm absolutely correct on this issue, that minors can't really consent or understand the lifelong ramifications of these treatments, and it's too soon to tell whether they really need them and want them, and that they should wait till at least 18. I think that's actually pretty common sense, and I do think I'm correct, but who knows? Maybe I'm not. And I'm always open to conversation and debate, even about tricky and controversial issues. And so the one thing I did want to shout out Kiara for, and Jane and everybody else involved in the panel, is that they were all really friendly, really open-minded. They had this attitude of agree to disagree, discuss different ideas respectfully. It was not at all hostile in that sense. And I thought they were all like really kind and professional. And overall, it was a really good experience. And I would definitely do something with them again. It's kind of crazy when the woke professional LGBTQ activist is literally more open-minded than independent free thinker Tim Pool.
Brad is evil and accepts human sacrifice.
Yeah, as far as the panel and the conversation are considered, I just think I'll say this. If LGBT people want to see acceptance and support for things like gay marriage continue to go down, not up, keep doing what you're doing. If that's your goal, you're doing amazing, honestly. If your goal is to actually see LGBT people enjoy dignity and acceptance and tolerance in this country, which is my goal. And I honestly do believe it's the goal of people like Kiera. I just think their methods are not working towards that goal. Then what y'all are doing now is not working. It is far too radical, far too hostile, far too extreme and too isolating. And if the movement clings to these radical ideas, whether it's putting biologically male violent criminals in women's prisons or pushing for child sex changes, if it clings to these radical ideas, the American public is never going to support that. And to some extent, when they stop supporting us, we'll have ourselves to blame. That was the kind of message I tried to bring to that kind of overwhelmingly left of center, heavily gay audience. And you know what? Some of them actually seemed receptive to it. But what do you guys think of these clips from this event? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do hit that like button while you're at it, and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Up next, I gotta show you guys a truly wild clip from MSNBC where a Democratic congresswoman floats a pretty crazy conspiracy theory. So y'all probably remember Jasmine Crockett, the Democrat from Texas, who has gone viral a bunch of times. I've discussed her on this show because she is very hostile towards her colleagues at times, to say the least. She's the one who had that brouhaha with Nancy Mace, where Nancy Mace actually went even further and tried to tell her to catch her outside or something.
Catch me outside, how about that?
Well, Congresswoman Crockett was on MSNBC and floated a new conspiracy theory about Trump I actually hadn't heard before. Take a listen.
It is really awful. And I know right now people are asking whether or not their IRS refund checks are going to be affected. We don't know if this is more DEI. Are you going to say if it's somebody that's a person of color, then for some reason, whatever they paid in to the federal government, they're not allowed to get it back? Like, we don't know, but there is no reason for any political appointee, if you can even call him that, to have this kind of access. There's none.
So the context for this clip was kind of the criticism and panic over Elon Musk's Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, setting up and apparently getting access to tons of government systems and people's data, which, you know, we can talk about that. Maybe there are some concerns with that. And I do actually think some of the stuff they're doing is legally dubious. I mean, whether they can really shut down an entire agency, USAID, without Congress passing a law, I'm kind of skeptical of that. But regardless, what is Congresswoman Crockett talking about exactly? She just suggested, first off, I struggle to even understand, like, she is not particularly eloquent, to say the very least, but I struggle to understand that word salad she just hit us with. But she actually just suggested that the government under Trump and Elon is going to withhold Black people's tax refunds. Ma'am, what? And who are these people who you say are, everyone's talking about this and everyone's worried about this? I don't know anybody talking about that, except maybe the deepest corners of woke TikTok, where they're constantly saying things that aren't true and spreading baseless panic, which apparently they also do with some regularity on networks like MSNBC. But that's not a thing. Nobody wants to do that. Trump doesn't want to do that. Elon doesn't want to do that. If anything, it's kind of hilarious to me to hear Democrats like Jasmine Crockett fighting apparently for people to get tax refunds. Like, y'all are the ones constantly trying to take more of our money. And whether you agree with him on other things or not, Trump cut our taxes last time he was president. And now you're acting like he wants to deny people their tax money getting refunded. No, he doesn't. Not Black people, not white people. If anything, he wants to do more tax cuts. In terms of income tax, at least. I mean, we can talk about the tariffs. That's a whole nother topic. But just to hear people floating these things out, like, wildly with no real basis, and just, that's like normal. That's the tone and the temperature of our discourse, that people just say random crap like this all the time. And not just like some woke person on TikTok, sitting members of Congress just go on television and say crazy things with no basis in reality. Heck, I mean, Trump does that too, but they're supposed to be different, right? They're supposed to be better, but they kind of engage in many of the things they constantly criticize him for. It's just sounds different, takes different shapes, takes different forms. Sometimes it's more polished, and they do it on MSNBC instead of on Truth Social. There was another part of her MSNBC interview that I found equally alarmist and concerning.
Not our democracy. Well, he did say he'd be a dictator on day one. Oh, Democrats, it's just Trump. He just talks. Well, let me tell you something. He is doing more than talking. We talked about Project 2025. We talked about the consolidation of power. We talked about how he wanted to be a king. We talked about in a democratic republic, that is not what it is. We have some sort of checks and balances, and he is doing everything that he can to get rid of those checks and balances. The DOJ and the people that he's going after were simply doing their jobs. The problem is that Americans thought that it was okay to take a full-fledged criminal and make him the president of the United States, and then they want to act aghast when he does criminal things. Let me tell you, we have a thug in charge of the United States, and if we don't wake up, we may not have a United States, because right now he has only been successful in being a divider in chief.
Calm down, Jasmine. We are going to have a United States, and the country is not going to crack up just because of a couple of years of chaos. This kind of thing is always incredibly historically short-sighted. The country's actually been through much worse and much more tumultuous times than this and made it out through the other end. So I really find that kind of alarmist doomsday rhetoric disappointing and concerning, because a lot of people buy it and believe it and genuinely do fall for it. And then they end up all worked up and hating their neighbors and spewing toxicity on social media because they look to people like this for thought leadership and they lead them astray. There's also some points in there I want to address, like Trump being a criminal is only a point because they prosecuted him over bookkeeping offenses related to a payment he made to Stormy Daniels. It's not like he did a crime that's even a crime. First of all, a lot of legal experts think the theory used to convict him was wildly distorted and twisted. And regardless, it's not something that really bothers most people. It's not a serious criminal offense. And so to cast that aspersion around, especially when y'all are supposed to be the criminal justice reform people, the people who think that, committing a crime, going to jail, whatever, shouldn't be the end of your life. And I'm actually pretty sympathetic to that view, that we need to reintegrate people and welcome them back into society if they've done their time. Then acting like he's a criminal because of some bookkeeping offense that they stretched into all these felonies and got in this wildly partisan prosecutor, it just doesn't hit the way you think it hits. And he hasn't done anything criminal as president. He's certainly done some things that you could argue are unconstitutional overreach, and you can challenge them in court, and maybe the Supreme Court would rule that they are, but he hasn't committed a criminal act. She didn't name one, and I'm not even sure what she could be referring to. I just thought this segment and this interview with this congresswoman really summed up everything that's wrong with partisan media and with hyperbolic partisan commentators. We're supposed to be serving their constituents in Congress, but spend their time pandering to the extreme base instead. But what did you think? What do you think of Jasmine Crockett more broadly? Let me know in the comments. And now I want to touch on a TikTok trend I discovered that made me roll my eyes so hard I gave myself a headache. It all started when I came across this dude on TikTok and a mega viral video he had where he was putting red lipstick on and saying that he was going to wear red lipstick to school every day until Trump was no longer president. Take a look at the video. Babe, that shade is not your color. I mean, when I saw this, I was like, I don't know how Trump will ever recover. But apparently this isn't just this one dude. It's like a whole trend that people are doing, wearing red lipstick to resist Trump. And I'm so curious as to what these people think they're accomplishing. They're all giving this energy like they think they just did their big one. They think they just dropped an absolute bar. And I'm like, no one cares, right? Normal people walking around, I mean, they might notice with the dude, to be honest, but with these women, it's just going to think, oh, that's just a woman wearing red lipstick. They're not going to be like, oh, wow, she must be protesting. Like, what? Are y'all really that disconnected with day-to-day life and reality? Yeah, well, it's TikTok. So, but then my algorithm started feeding me these videos and I'm like, what is going on with this red lipstick? So I looked for somebody explaining the origin of this trend. And guys, it's way more. I knew it was going to be Delulu. It's way more Delulu than I thought. Take a listen to this video of a helpful explainer of this new protest trend that's taking over TikTok.
Did you know there's an actual political meaning behind wearing red lipstick? Because now that I know this, I'm not gonna stop wearing this for the next 4 years. During World War II, wearing red lipstick actually became symbolic for a variety of reasons. I was today's years old when I found out that the mustache man actually hated red lipstick, where he actually sought to ban cosmetic surgery from Germany altogether. So as you can imagine, wearing red lipstick actually became symbolic of victory against the mustache man's regime. And we all know what mustache man I'm talking about. So it actually became a symbol against fascism as a whole. As you see this red lipstick discourse pop up everywhere on your timeline, remember the history of women that paved the way for you to wear it so proudly.
So I have no idea, and I honestly don't care enough to check if any of these facts are true. Like when I get history from TikTok, coin flip whether it's accurate or whether it's the fever dream of some Gen Z person on too much Adderall. But let's just say it is true, because it does seem to be what's inspiring these young people and these TikTokers who are all putting on red lipstick to protest Trump or whatever. Y'all cannot be serious. Y'all cannot seriously be comparing yourself to people that resisted Hitler in Nazi Germany because you're wearing red lipstick. Like, the audacity. It's the audacity. The constant invocations of Hitler and World War II are bad enough because it's actually profoundly disrespectful to the trauma of the Jewish people, but I'm kind of used to that by now. But this cosplaying of resistance, I mean, so many of these videos have this, like, I've never actually seen the movie, but I'm pretty sure the song is from The Hunger Games. So many of these people want to be the main character in a dystopian novel so badly, but they're not. They're literally not. And they are just cosplaying as oppressed and brave saviors who are like protesting as part of a resistance without actually doing anything meaningful that anyone will even notice. And without, more importantly, sacrificing anything at all. Like, it's so easy to do these pointless protests and TikTok trends when it doesn't involve any sort of risk to you financially, personally, socially. In fact, nobody will even know that that's what you're doing because you're just doing something people do every day anyway. But I guess it will make you feel good. You might get lots of likes and dopamine on TikTok, but the whole thing is silly. You look silly. And honestly, 5 years from now, when Trump's no longer president and the United States did not, in fact, descend into the Handmaid's Tale, you're going to look back on these videos and these trends and cringe and be incredibly embarrassed that you ever participated in it. But what do you guys think? Have you seen the red lipstick trend over your For You pages and social media feeds? Let me know in the comments below. Do hit the like button while you're at it, and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. We're growing so fast. Can't wait to hit 200K. We're getting there real quick, actually. And let me know in the comments if you're going to tune in and watch me on CNN tonight. I'm sure I'll post clips or share an update after the show and let y'all know how it goes. With that, we'll talk again real soon.